very good, very warm welcome to LACTV. Obviously, in light of the coronavirus, our next event was at our usual venue, what had to be cancelled. But luckily, we had a booking in the book, and we were able to restage it live, thanks to London Animation Club Technical Director Tom Lowe, who's done some experimental transmissions before. And I'm delighted to welcome Abigail Addison, Roy Butler and Leo Crane for our new event, Nude Triumphant. So I think this is a bit of a first for us. We're going to close with a Q&A. And so if you want to write in a question, then can you do it in the comments box underneath this transmission in Facebook, or tweet using hashtag Nude Triumphant. So yeah, we're going to close with, after the screening of the Animatic, we're going to close with a Q&A. So I do hope that everyone watching will be able to take part in that. So I think I'll just hand over to Abigail, the producer of Nude Triumphant.
Thank you, Martin. Yeah, so I'm one of the directors of Animate Projects. And we're an agency that specialises in producing and distributing experimental animation. And I work with Gary Thomas, who's based in Derby. If you've never heard of us before, do check our website, animateprojects.org. So we've worked with many members of the London Animation Club over the years, including Lizzie Hobbs, working on a 4th film with her at the moment. Nika Harrison, we just finished a film in January. Sam Moore, Ellie Land, Katerina Thanasopoulou. Working on a new film with Jess Ashman at the moment, and Jess and Leo and Kate Sullivan, who's also a regular, Ian Goldston, Laurie Hill, Ozzy Parker, were all part of a project we did in 2018 called Untold Tales, which was something that was made for Animating, which was a celebration of British animation that year. And that's the first time that me and Leo worked together, which was really exciting. Even though I've actually known Leo since about 2012, when he just graduated with his computer animation degree, far, far back in the past, before he started doing all this amazing experimental work. So Untold Tales was a really good opportunity, because even though it was a really small, short timescale commission, it was an opportunity to see what Leo is capable of, and to be able to work together. And I think it was a really sort of set the scene for what you're about to see, the Nude Triumphant. And if you haven't seen The Foundling, which was the film that Leo made, you can watch it on Vimeo or on Instagram. As I said, 60 seconds, it doesn't take very long to view it. And in that, it's a charcoal animation, so it's already something showing the technique and the craft of Leo's work. And also in terms of storytelling, it's about taking a real life story and then using an artistic expression to kind of bring that story to life. And I think, as you'll see with the work that we're doing now, Nude Triumphant really follows on for that. So I guess we started working on this. It's weird to think with these projects, always with short form animation. We started working on this in January last year. And that's when we really started developing it. And that was a really good opportunity to come together and look at the script, start working on the animatic, looking at budgeting and fundraising and where this film might go when it gets finally made. And it was really exciting to be part of really Figuration's first independent production. So I'm really pleased to be working with Roy and with Leo and the team on this project. And I will let them say some more about where it all came from.
The film you've just watched is an edit of the behind-the-scenes footage that we've been making with Angelica Winnett, the videographer who's part of our project. So it seems like sound is working, which is great news. Thank you, everyone. Angelica's been following us since day one of production, really, with the kickoff meeting that you saw in our flat, where we cooked everyone a nice big dinner to get the creative ideas flowing. But the project really brings together everything that we do at Figuration, which is not just animation. Do you want to explain the other side of what we do?
We like to think of Figuration as a creative studio. And when people ask us what that means, the easiest thing that there is to say about that is we have a passion and purpose for telling stories. And of course, animation's a really great way of sharing the stories that people have to tell, our own stories, and relating with people and communities. Another way that we do that is through communications with organizations, a lot of comms work actually, but also through events. Events and experiences are a big part of what we do, because what better way to communicate with people than to actually work directly with people. Now, having said all that, during the current crisis, working with people is a bit tricky, and it's sort of not happening very much. But apart from that, it has been a huge part of what we do. It's a very grassroots thing. And so life drawing experiences, animation workshops, visual storytelling, green screen, whether it's communities and libraries, public ticketed experiences, lakes and museums and galleries, working with architects, I could go on and on and on. Whatever avenues there are for us to be able to work with people to tell their sort of creative stories, but also enable people to, I don't know, create their own work, their own projects, to find their experimental bones in their bodies. That's the kind of thing that we enjoy doing.
And that's really where the concept for this animation started. We wanted to create a project that brought everything together. So Nude Triumphant, the final result and the lasting result is an animation, but along the way we have a series of workshops. You just saw Starker's Academy, which was led by the wonderful Joe Calderwood, who has created a character called the Professor, who is in the animation, but is also a real life compare for our Academy for New Life Models. And we also had more traditional life drawing workshops. I just posted a little video from the last one we managed to squeeze in before lockdown. That's on the London Animation Club Facebook page, where, Roy, you were modelling for about 15 participants, and they made around 100 drawings, which will be part of the final animation.
And I think that's a really important thing to mention about this particular project. It will culminate in an animation that will be shopped around to festivals far and wide. That's the end product. But another end product of that is the amount of interaction we've had with participants, and participants who've actually gone ahead and created content for this film. So it's not just coming from the 3-4 animators who are working on this project. They're actually being inspired by the life models and the feminist clowns, thank you Joanna Calderwood, and various other people who are actually posing for it, but also people who have gone to life drawing experiences that are directly related to this project, creating that content, and then that content is going to end up in the film. So it really is a passion project for real collaborative working.
And it started with a blog that you wrote back in, we think, 2013, but sort of lost in the midst of time.
For as long as I've been modeling professionally, almost, that I've been keeping a blog that has enabled me to respond to the things that I read. It's called Literary Impressions. If you find it on Tumblr, then more power to you, because it's buried down in there. But somewhere along the way, Leo found this blog about 7 years ago. And one of the entries that I made was called A London Model, and I was responding to a book that I read called London Triptych by Jonathan Kemp, and in that was a life model. And I thought about how that life model was represented, and I thought about what it felt like to life model myself. And so immediately I said, okay, well, I need to write about my experience. This is my response to that novel, but it's also my response to what I feel and how I live through this experience. So Nude Triumphant is in turn a direct response to that. It's come out of that. I've scripted it, but I will say that, you know, for as much as it's motivated by a blog, I think the brainchild of the project is Leo's, because when he read this blog, he thought, I want to do something with this. So then it enabled us to actually work collaboratively to make it a reality.
Yeah, and since then we started actually with interviewing a number of life models, 3 of whom have gone on to help develop the script, and particularly there's Maya Williams, who is online now, so for the Q&A she'll be able to pitch in. So she started life modeling with us. Maya, I hope you don't mind us talking for you in one of the very
We're going to do it anyway, Maya.
We're going to do one of the very first Starkers Academies.
Starkers Academy 2.
Yeah, do you want to explain what Starkers Academy actually is?
Yeah, we talked about the Starkers Academy. You saw in the behind the scenes clip the professor, played by Joe Calderwood, hosting the Starkers Academy, but actually it started out as just, and it is still just a platform for anyone who wants to try life modeling, and that is it. It's a life drawing experience for any abilities, whether you feel you can draw or not, whether you draw all the time or hardly any at all. Go draw, fantastic. But the models themselves are actually doing it for the very first time, and it was something that I really wanted to do when I started, when we started actually doing our own events. I thought if I'm going to do a life drawing event, that I'd love to be able to sort of give someone an opportunity to feel perhaps what I felt or not. Maybe it's about ticking something off of a bucket list, and then that's fine too. And somehow that's actually grown into 13 installments. So what you actually saw on the behind the scenes was the 13th Starkers Academy. We'd love to do more as soon as people can get together for events, but we've had lots of success in actually engaging people with this, drawers and models alike, and a lot of people have actually gone on to life model afterwards. Yeah. One of those people is Maya Williams, who plays the character M in the film Nude Triumphant.
And she's joined by Matthew Agini and Valentina Rock, who play the characters of Matt and V, respectively. And so all this chat about life drawing and life modeling is really to give you an idea of how the animation story developed and how the community came together to form as a team of 13 people who developed this animation. So us two, Maya and Matthew and Valentina, Joanna Calderwood, who plays the professor. We have the composer Andrew Hayes, who I've worked with on pretty much all my animations so far. And sound designer Andy Humphreys. Our producer is obviously Abigail, but we have an executive producer, Celia Atkin.
And the animators.
And the animators.
Slash director, Leo Crane, also an animator. Aaron Jacob Jones, whose particular task is animating the professor. Very skilled watercolor, particularly animated, which works really well for us because this is a watercolor animation. And Haemin Ko, who is a fantastic fine art animator, charcoal, watercolor. It's handmade. She's in there. So
and
fantastic team.
Patrick Yates is also one of our animators. He's the third member of Figuration of our studio. So we're really coming at this from a fine art perspective, trying to use as many of the techniques that you would find in the live studio to take into the animation. So pretty much all the paintings are done from life. We're then bringing them into After Effects to animate. Some of it is frame by frame, and others of it are still paintings that we've overlaid After Effects to make them move. We're trying whatever we can to find a look that feels liquid and watercolory, something very different to a lot of animations I've seen that use watercolor. There's quite often they're used for backgrounds, or they used and then the characters seem to be not painted frame by frame necessarily, but moved in a more like a cutout way. But we would, as part of this project, we would love to know of other watercolor animations that anyone can suggest, because it would be fascinating to see how our approach sits with other people's. Particularly, we've been looking at people like Lizzie Hobbs. Lizzie, I don't know if you're watching this, but if you are, thank you for the inspiration. So we're at a stage now where we have a pretty much a locked edit for the animatic. We're going to show you that. When you watch it, you'll see that it's still very much a work in progress. Some frames is just storyboard frames. There's a bit of line drawing in it, and then there are places where we started to integrate the paintings that Co has made of Roy, that I've made of Matthew and Valentina and M, and then the next step will be to get Aaron's paintings in of the professor, and then you'll have all the characters done. And after we've got the characters in place, we'll be looking at the backgrounds, which are not necessarily going to be literal depictions of the spaces that the characters are in, but something that adds to that watercolory feel, splashes, drops, drips, that kind of thing. Yeah, lots of it is still uncertain. We're finding our way as we go along. The great thing about Animate and the Arts Council who are funding the project is that we've been allowed to experiment along the way. We haven't had to lock everything down and sign everything off before we get going. There's been a great sort of freedom in that, which has been absolutely terrific.
I think it's really enabled us to move forward as best as possible with the project. So thank you very much for that, to both of them.
We're going to have a Q&A after the animatic, but I think can we hand back to you, Abigail, now to introduce it and to pose some of the questions that we want people to consider.
Great.
Abigail, you're on mute.
I've unmuted myself. Okay, hopefully everyone can hear me now. Anyway, as Leo's explained, it's an animatic, so please be kind. But we would really welcome your feedback on what we're about to show you. I mean, I think it's really exciting, and I think what you'll see in terms of the start of the watercolor elements is really beautiful. But what we're really interested in is hearing other animators' opinions. And here's just some questions that we'd like to sort of seed your thinking with. So, you know, sort of what we're interested in, what you personally take away from watching this film, whether you feel the story is clear, whether you feel there's any confusion in what you're seeing. We're particularly interested in how it makes you feel about the human body, and in particular your own body, and what the different voices make you feel about identity in general. And as sort of Leo mentioned earlier, we're interested if you can sort of think of if there are any other comparative films that come to mind when you watch it, and where you might think would be a good place for audiences to engage with this film. So there's just a few kind of questions. We're not expecting you to come back with a comprehensive answers to all of them, but just some things we'd be interested to have your opinions on. Roll the animatic.
Great. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you understood that, more to the point. As you've seen, there are bits where we're starting to replace the paintings, or the animatic with paintings. As you will have heard, most of the voiceovers are pretty fixed. The music is getting there. The sound design is yet to come. But yeah, I think we would love to hear from you rather than say anything more about it from us. So there's a question from my mother, Fania. And the question is, where would you hope to show this, your audience? And then she also very kindly says, love the colours and the comedy. Abigail, do you want to answer this? About festivals we've been talking about.
Well, we'd love to show it at some film festivals if they ever happen ever again.
It will eventually.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are lots of amazing animation festivals out there that are really into more experimental, much more handcrafted work. So we're definitely targeting those kind of festivals. But I think what's particularly brilliant about this film is the fact that it has this relationship with live. It has this relationship with the live event as well. So we're really hoping to present the film alongside a Starkers Academy event, so that there will be a live modelling and painting and drawing as well alongside it. So I think that's really nice that it has that symbiotic relationship with the material, the process, with the film. But of course, we're open to showing the work in galleries, museums, public screens, wherever that's appropriate and that we can sort of find a place for it.
But just to add to that, we have actually, as part of the Arts Council bid, we did put together some outputs from it, with the animation obviously as one of them, the Starkers Academy Ball, which Abigail mentioned, which will bring all the characters behind the animation together, and that was going to be on the 17th of May as part of Brighton Fringe Festival. Fortunately, it looks like that's not going to be cancelled, but only postponed until the autumn. So we're at the moment rearranging dates and all that to hopefully to do it in October. Is that right?
No, that's the idea. I
Yeah.
guess it depends on when Brighton Fringe decides to reschedule everything, or reschedule the entire month or so of events, and then all being well, then we'll be down in Brighton doing that in the autumn.
Yeah, and just Emma, to answer your question, first of all, thank you for mentioning the Queen's Monastery. That's a definitely one that we know about, so and well worth everyone having a look if you're interested in watercolour. The funny woman, who is played by Jo Calderwood, and we've called her the Professor, is very much a live action figure, but in the animation she will be painted from life. So we've been trying to, so I trained in 3D computer animation, where every pixel was planned and cleaned up and delivered on as intended. We've been trying to get as close to the live experience as possible. So wherever possible, we've been creating a performance that is then painted from life. So she is not going to be live action in the film, but she's going to be as close to it as we can get. And then for the Starkers Academy Ball, she will appear
In living colour.
In living colour.
In the flesh. Yeah.
And did I say exhibition already? That was the other output, an exhibition of the paintings from the animation, which again was scheduled for late spring, early summer at the West Norwood Library and Picture House. We have a relationship with Picture House Cinemas. That we think again will just be a matter of rescheduling, but it will still go ahead probably at the end of the year, running into Christmas.
Yeah, and the idea with that one is it will be a work, I suppose solely, but certainly primarily of Leo's work and the work of Haemin Ko, one of the animators. Perhaps more animators, but it'll be all drawn from the film as well, so that people can then sort of see some of the work that's actually gone behind the moving images.
A question for you, experienced festival submitters and showers, animators. We have been, originally this was planned very much as a queer film, and we were looking at places like the Iris Prize to be our UK premiere. The film has lost its overt queer content as we've kind of honed the story and focused really in on what it's actually about, which is something else, which I'm not going to say because it'd be good to hear from you what you think it's about before I say it. But whether this would qualify as a queer film is a question that we've been asking ourselves, and whether it's worth prioritizing queer festivals or whether it's not queer enough, basically.
Which may well be the case, but it's nice to hear that feedback.
So, may I ask a question? I'm sorry you lost me earlier on. I was actually watching the live transmission, so I actually completely forgot there was a 30-second delay. So I think it's very bold of you to screen a work in progress, parts of which are images from the storyboard. You kind of leave yourself open there. I think it's very, very bold. How do you see it kind of evolving over time? I mean, do you plan to screen it elsewhere as a work in progress so we can see the steps in between? Or is the next time you screen it probably going to be when it's complete?
Well, good question. We boldly said in our Arts Council application that we would engage a community of artists, students, animators in the creative process, part of which would be inviting them to see work in progress, feeding back on it, and helping us inform the development of the program.
So we're engagement partly. That's wonderful. We are engagement.
Thank you for engaging.
Thank you. But there's also a very genuine desire to to allow other people to feed into it, and for us to respond to people's engagement with it before it's too late. So, of course, you have the toss-up with the work in progress. Do you want to show people something that looks really good, but you're actually not really ever going to change because you've got so far down the line? We hope that we've got to the point where it's intelligible but still changeable.
Yeah.
So that we can really take on board the feedback that we get tonight.
I mean, recently we showed the animatic to another animator. I don't think we really intended to, but we did anyway. And she sort of came back with a lot of questions that forced us to rethink how clear we were expressing what we were meant to express in the film. So we then took those notes away and made some real changes, not to everything, but just to the intelligibility of the film, because as you as filmmakers, certainly as producers, Abigail, know, I imagine, you sort of feel that you are saying exactly what you really are trying to say, but get blinkered by that as well. So it was great to then have somebody else to come back and say, well, what is this and what is that? And realizing that actually what you were trying to say doesn't make sense. And if anything, we really want that engagement with the audiences, with you, with everyone on social media tonight, to sort of come back with something that questions the intelligibility of the piece. And other things like whether or not it's queer and not sort of make those decisions. We may or may not change things, but it's really important that the grand narratives and the sort of mini stories that we have running through it are sort of, they engage people in the ways we really want them, and for some levels of understanding that we really are hoping to, and then sort of leaving the rest to the end, really.
There are a couple of things that have come up here on the Facebook feed. Kate, thank you for offering a conversation about whether it's queer enough. I would love to have that with you. Emma, you've picked up on the professor character. And this is a really interesting one because we have talked about this quite a lot. In my mind, there's a kind of, I sort of think about it like Snow White. Elements of people that we know, but she's essentially been developed in any same way that you develop any fictional character, which is why we've allowed her to be much bigger, more exaggerated, and less real, really. So her character's supposed to represent more of a concept than a person, a bit like a Greek god. She kind of exists both on the earth and off it, as this kind of personification of time, as this person who can be with you wherever you are, whether you're in the city or whether you're in the academy, to support you in your relationship with time. I think there's something that will shift once we see the paintings in the animatic alongside the other paintings, particularly when we've got a scene of the professor and Jay talking together, and hopefully that will prove that they can exist together in the same space. It may not, in which case we'll have to make some changes.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, it's interesting about categorization and so on, and this obviously comes into how films are programmed in animation festivals and so on. Do you see the film as a documentary? Is that a section that you might enter it for in a festival?
Not this one, I don't think. It's interesting because The Foundling was actually, which was the 60-second animation that Abigail mentioned before. That one I did consider documentary, and there's not actually that much difference between the development process of the script and those two. Both started off with documentary style interviews. The story was found through the voice of the subject rather than the voice of me, the director.
Sound is gone.
Oh.
Okay.
Is it back?
Yeah.
Okay, never mind.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hopefully the sound is back. I've completely lost my train of thought.
Sorry about that.
The 60-second film, The Foundling.
Oh yeah, so whether it's documentary. So the one difference with this is we took the documentary interviews that we made with the models to inform the story, and we then scripted it from scratch. Whereas with the Foundling, we used the actual voice from the interviews and edited that into the voiceover. And I think that's probably where the difference comes with this Mood becomes fiction.
Sure. Okay. I do envy you the fact that you're working with texture so much. I find texture brings everything to life. The kind of the way you can see that this is material, as well as the line, as well as the painted line. I think that gives it a vitality that a lot of other forms of animation perhaps lack. I mean, how did you feel seeing these drawings coming to life in that kind of way? It must have been very exciting.
Yes, very exciting. I mean, I actually took a step back from animation for about 2 or 3 years because I found what I was doing was too staid and too planned and too clean, very digital, very CGI. That's not to say that all CGI is like that, but the way that I was going had become that. And I started drawing in charcoal, painting in oils, anything that would get me messy and I could actually feel it and use my fingers in the process of making the thing. So this is, the Foundling, and then this is just a real welcome return into animation, but taking that real world, things that exist and things that I've created and collaborated on with other people in the real world before they go digital. So there's that connection with texture.
I'm just there are a couple of questions that I want, but I'll go to the second one that I see. One, Kate Jessup asks about who the voiceover actors were. So apart from the professor, there are no actors in this. Joe Calderwood is a professional thespian, feminist clown, cabaret superstar.
If you can see any of her live shows, you must go. As soon as they come back on,
she's she's skilled. The rest of us are all life models. We thought that would just be the most genuine thing to do. So in terms of voiceover credits, there are 4 life models, one of whom, of course, is the main protagonist, along with the professor. And that person, the character's name is Jay, and that's voiced by me. The male life model, who's in blue, so if you do remember, all the life models have colors attached to them. His name is Matt in the animation. His real name is Matthew Ogany,
and he was in the live action behind the scenes film that you saw earlier. Yes.
The green life model is Maya Williams, whose character is M, and the other very Italian life model is Valentina Rock. I think perhaps the campus thing in the entire piece.
And, we should also say, sorry.
No.
I was going to say that Maya, since this, one of the other reasons was to try and forge new creative relationships, and Maya's gone on to work with us to write and voice other animations. So although she started not as a professional, she is now actually earning money as a voice artist and a scriptwriter and a
professional development through this piece. Yes. And then Valentina Rock plays the character V. So that's a little bit on that. And then somebody else asked Emmy Gatto about the animation process when working with watercolors. How unpredictable was it? And is it more complicated to have control frame by frame on the final outcome as compared to other techniques? Is there anything you want to say about that?
Yes, so losing control was the point of the project, really. We wanted not to be able to predict everything that came out of it and find those accidents. Having said that, as anyone who works with After Effects knows, there are ways of sequencing frames and overlaying and using crossfades between the frames that can minimize jitters. And we're still experimenting with how far to take that. But most of what you saw in the animatic was simply frame by frame paintings. And we will be revisiting that to look at different ways of interpolating them and layering them.
So yes.
So I would like to ask, it's perhaps an obvious question, but when is the exhibition going to happen? I want to see these individual drawings arranged on the walls so we can walk along them and see them and the projections of certain, cycles and everything. When's this going to happen? Abigail, when's this going to happen?
Well,
Later in the year.
So
when we're allowed out of our houses.
Yes, and when they open up West Norwood Library and Picture House again. So we curate the walls at West Norwood Picture House, and it was a great opportunity as a company, and it was just ideal really to be able to have that then as a space, a place to be able to put works that contribute to the film. The idea originally was to have exhibitions that went up in April by various artists on 2 different walls. We still will be doing that, but because things are closed, because Brighton Fringe has been pushed back, and so it makes sense to have something that runs concurrent with that, then we are going to push the exhibition back, date TBC. Right now I'm thinking it won't be until July, all being well, but we're looking at July, August sometime again, all being well. So it should be this year. And it should be going on at the same time as Brighton Fringe. And again, that's our plan.
As soon as you're out of isolation, come up to the studio and you can see the painting.
Exactly.
Come on, I'll show you our paintings sometime.
Exactly.
Marvelous.
So I do give you more than that.
It does beg the question whether we might be able to do projections, whether they, I don't know, the authorities will allow artists to project from their windows or put in, I don't know, projections onto buildings. You could go in, set it up, then move 2 meters away, then maybe people start walking past. I think figuration is where we should go. I love the idea of this work being, have cycles of it projected. So
there are more questions, but I'm looking at the time. It's 9 o'clock.
Well, should we, as I say in the live show? Well, we've just got time for a couple more questions. What I was going to say, just maybe while everyone's thinking, I think that I would be very interested to hear from yourselves and people watching us ideas for doing future broadcasts. Really, you can say how successful it's been, but also whether anyone has ideas, other animators wanting to take part in an equivalent broadcast and so on. Yeah, so I mean, Abigail, Roy, Leo, perhaps you can have a think about where we might go forward with this. I think it's a wonderful idea. I like to think it's got some of the, relaxed informality of the actual Green Man shows. I suppose this is the best we can do, but I'm sure we can take it, do something exciting with it that we might not be able to do at the Green Man. Who knows where we can take it.
Also, by the time we come out of quarantine and isolation, a lot of people will be a lot more used to this way of presenting and communicating.
I think so. I really think so.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Roy and Leo, do you? I think that the time being such as it is, maybe we'll start to wrap up. What are your plans for other work in the future?
So many plans.
Right. What do we have going on in the future apart from trying to get this film finished?
Well, we're already thinking about the next. So we've got various ideas. I'm quite keen to develop the idea of bringing. So in this project, we've looked at how we bring the story across multiple platforms. So in an exhibition, in a live show, in an animation. To look further at that, particularly around more installation-based presentations of animation. So how we can use gallery spaces, looking at artists like Isaac Julian and how he uses multi-screen installations, we're
also working with a couple of filmmakers to really try and launch a couple of new charcoal animation project.
We do actually have a very traditional narrative animation on the books that we are developing at the moment, which is a beautiful story set in medieval Japan, which is around the power of image making. But it's a it has a traditional narrative construct. So that's something that we could go to the BFI for. Yeah, we've got. Our aim is always to have a number of projects on the books, and then we be opportunistic about which ones we can get funding for and take that one forward.
And Abigail, what are you working on next? What's in the pipeline?
Oh, hundreds of films. How many of them will get made is another question.
Okay.
Well, I'm working. Yeah. I'm working with Jessica Ashman on a film which was supposed to premiere at Flatpack Festival in May, but we'll see when that will actually come out now. But that's a film called Daughter, and it's also a live performance and film. So it's quite interesting doing these two projects at the same time that both have performance elements and also animation. It's been really good. Yeah, lots of things on the go.
Well, shall we? Just looking at the comments as well. Do you want to read any out, guys? Someone, John has written, "Thank you so much for showing this. Love to see the final film. I'm curious though. You mentioned it might be screened screened in slightly
LGBT.
Yeah, it's actually LGBTQIA plus festivals, right at the centre of a Venn diagram of queer and life drawing. Is Quentin Crisp was in any way a queer inspiration?" And Emma Calder says you could show it at the Sketch Club in Chelsea, also Chelsea Arts Club. And Avida says, excellent idea for streaming. I live far away and I miss London Animation Club very much. Well, Avidas, I hope. Well, it's lovely to hear from you. We haven't seen you in a long time, and yeah, Tom will be doing some more streaming. Okay,
streaming.
Well, look, streaming. Yeah,
streaming.
Well, I think that's.
Yeah, there are a couple more just to acknowledge the comments. Thank you, Pip Hewson, for your comments on the paintings. Yes, we would consider selling the images. That was part of the exhibition idea. That's also part of our budget income stream. So we hope that we will sell some.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we've missed many comments, but thank you all. We're going to go back through them and type our answers into the group. So thank you very much for all of those comments.
Indeed.
There's just one comment I want to read out, and I'll leave it to Stephen Quennett. He says, "Feels like I'm in the pub!" Exclamation mark. So I think that is a great compliment. So if you're happy to leave it there, I mean, thank you so much, Leo, Roy, and Abigail. A really marvelous project, and I do hope you might screen future versions of it as it evolves, and certainly come and show the completed version. Yeah, so a big thank you to Leo, Roy, and Abigail. Thank you very much indeed to Tom Lowe, our London Animation Club technical director. I think a big round of applause. Who has?
Oh, and actually, I will say. Can I say one more thing before we sign off? We've spoken a lot about the difficulty in being able to work to hold events at this time, venues being closed. It also means a lot of people out of work. This being a project that revolves around life models, also it means it's a project that revolves around freelancers who aren't working right now. So one thing I would like to do at the very, very end of this is big up a hashtag campaign, hashtag get your nudes out. And basically anyone who's ever done any life drawing and has their work sitting around somewhere and not knowing what to do with it, they can sell it online using that hashtag, and the proceeds go to the life models. And so it's just a way of actually sort of keeping people sort of within the workforce and valid and recognized, helping out a little bit and building the community in a different way. So I just want to put that shout out there, and yeah, hashtag get your nudes out.
Okay. Well, thank you all, and we hope to come back broadcasting again soon. I hope people will leave comments on suggestions, and also thank you all. So we'll hand over to Tom now, and a big round of applause, I think, for everyone who's tuned in.
Thank you.
Okay, see you all soon.